Lisa. I'm the Barefoot Pampered chef, and today I'm going to show you how to make some really good banana bread with a crunchy cinnamon topping. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I'm making it. I'm actually making a double batch, so mine's going to look a little bit more than yours, but I'm going to say the ingredients for a single batch. So what we're going to do first is we're going to mix all of our dry ingredients into one bowl so we get them all together. So the first couple of dry ingredients that we have, I have my little cups, so I'll tell you what each one of these are. Oh, okay. So we're going to add 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. So of course I'm adding 3 cups because I'm making a bigger batch. That's fine. Then we're going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Now remember, the difference between baking powder and baking soda is baking powder has a plus, P for plus, and it is baking soda plus other ingredients. We're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda and a teaspoon of salt. So to this, I'm going to add 2/3 cup of sugar. And we're going to give that just a quick mix. Now I'm using my pastry cutter or pastry blender because it just kind of incorporates all of the ingredients really well. So this is my pastry blender. And I'm just kind of working that through to make this all one nice mixture, because when we mix it with our wet ingredients, we want it to be nice and incorporated and equal throughout. The other thing that I'm going to add to that is our quick cook oats. So we're going to add 3/4 cup of quick cook oats, and I'm going to mix those in a minute. To our wet ingredients, so I'm going to mix this in this bowl because I'm going to add my dry ingredients to my wet ingredients. There you go. We're going to add 4 eggs, well 2 eggs for your batch, 4 eggs for mine. So 2 eggs for a single batch, 1/3 cup of milk, oh, we got a little piece of shell in there, so you just take your other piece of shell, dip it down in there. The shell is going to attract the other piece of shell, and they're really easy to get out that way. So 1/3 cup of milk, I have mine in my measure-all. One side is for wet ingredients, the other side is for dry, or sticky, like mayonnaise. And then we're going to add our oil, so 1/4 cup of canola oil. And we're going to add 3 ripe mashed bananas. So I'm using 6, and that's why I'm making a double batch. So what I did was, right as my bananas were starting to go really, really ripe, I mashed them in a Ziploc container, and then I threw them into the freezer. And so for this recipe, I just thawed them out really quick. So get all of that nice banana-y goodness in there. And we're just going to give this a quick mix. Some of my bananas are just a little bit frozen still, but that's okay. It's going to taste really good. So we're going to get this all nice and combined, get those eggs kind of beaten up there. While I'm doing this, I already have my oven set at 350 degrees. And I'm going to make my banana bread in my brownie pan. You can make it in, a larger loaf pan if you would like. But I have 2 brownie pans, and so I'm going to make 2 brownie pans full of little banana bread squares. So I've got this pretty well beaten up, and I'm just going to add in my dry ingredients. I'm going to kind of add them in slowly and just kind of mix as I go. Maybe a little bit faster than just slow. And this will start to form a nice kind of liquidy dough. I'm just doing this a little bit at a time. If you dump it all in and mix it around, it should work just fine. But sometimes it's easier when you're baking if you add your dry ingredients a little bit at a time. A lot of times it gives things a little bit more of a texture. Hoping my batter bowl will be big enough, but it's fairly big, so it should be fine. And then I'm going to show you how to make the nice crumble topping for this. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to incorporate that topping into the middle of these banana muffin or banana bread bites. Okay. Just going to throw the rest of that in there. Wipe my hand off a little bit here. It's always nice to have a, well, until it fell on the floor, it's always nice to have a towel around right next to you so you can wipe your hands off really quick. Try to mix this all in without getting myself completely full of flour here. Once I get this all mixed in, we're going to set it aside just for a second. I'm going to use the bowl that I had my dry mix in, and I'm going to use that for my topping. That way I'm not using up too many bowls, and I don't have that much cleanup afterwards. So this is all coming together. I'm not seeing as much of my dry ingredients as I was before. You want to make sure you scrape the bottom, make sure everything is incorporated. Alright, that looks pretty good. And this is about the consistency of maybe a thick, sticky oatmeal. Alright, we're going to put that over here for 1 second. Clean up my area just a little bit. We're going to take our bowl that we had our dry ingredients in. We're going to mix 2 tablespoons of flour, just an all-purpose flour. If you like a thicker crust, this is going to form a thicker crust. If you like a thinner topping, just omit the flour. We're going to add a half of a cup of sugar, and I've got a teaspoon of cinnamon in here as well. So you can see that the cinnamon went in as well. And I have 2 tablespoons of softened or melted butter. So I'm going to pour that in. And I'm just going to use my pastry blender. You can use a fork. And we're going to kind of mix this all together until it forms almost the consistency of a wet sand. So I'll show you, it's coming together pretty nicely. It almost has that wet sand consistency. I can still see some of my butter not blended in that well. Mix this together a little bit more. Still see some of that flour that hasn't been incorporated yet. Okay, now it's kind of a nice wet sand and it's all been incorporated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my batter. I just have a small little ladle. You can use the really amazing Pampered Chef scoops to do this as well. So I'm going to take my ladle and I'm going to take, we're going to do this. We're going to move this over here. Less mess. We're just going to take a spoonful of the batter and we're going to kind of plop it down in each one of these wells. And I'll do one so you guys can see this. Doo-doo. So I'll do these 3. So we're just going to kind of let that be the bottom layer there. So I only filled it up maybe about halfway. We're going to take a little sprinkle of our filling and put that inside. And then we're going to cover that back up with some more of this lovely banana bread on top. Kind of almost like a layered cake. And then I'm just going to give that a tap. Shake it out, make sure it's nice and even. And we're going to sprinkle on a little bit more of our topping. Now for a loaf pan, the recipe tells us that we're going to cook it at 350 for 50 to 60 minutes until a cake texture comes out clean. I would suggest if you're doing it in any other vessel that you keep an eye on it and do it in increments of 20 minutes to make sure that you're not overcooking it. So for this recipe, I'm going to read it back to you again since I'm doing a double batch. And this is Cinnamon Crunch Banana Bread. We're going to use 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of salt, 2/3 cup of sugar, 3/4 cup of quick cook oats. Those are our dry ingredients. We're going to mix those in a bowl and set them aside for a minute. For our wet ingredients, we're going to do 1/4 cup of canola oil, 2 large eggs, 1/3 cup of milk, 3 very ripe mashed bananas, and you can also in this add 1/2 cup of walnuts. That's optional. So once we get our wet ingredients mixed, we're going to add our dry ingredients slowly. For the topping, we're going to do 1/2 cup of sugar. We're going to do 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 2 tablespoons of softened butter, and 2 tablespoons of flour if you would like the topping to be thicker and a little bit more crunchy. So all of this, the batter bowl, my mixer, my pastry blender, my brownie pan, and even a lot of my prep bowls, you can find at www.pamperedchef.biz/Lisa Wright, LISAWRIGHT. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at #BarefootPC. And you can also find me on YouTube at the Barefoot Pampered Chef channel. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks.